Next, we'll hear from Barry Halley. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Is Halley correct? Barry Halley is a former employee of WWNS and Cape Environmental, worked for Worldwide Network Services as a project manager under a DynCorp subcontract in the year 2004. In this capacity, he worked on communications projects and business development. Mr. Halley also worked for Cape Environmental Management as the operations and security manager for Iraq operations. Previously, he worked in the telecommunications industry. Mr. Halley is a Marine veteran, Marine Corps veteran, and his son currently serves in the United States Air Force. Mr. Halley, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Barry Halley, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak before you today about my experience as a contractor in Iraq. It's my hope that in speaking...
Can you turn your microphone on, Mr. Halley?
Can you hear me?
What? There you go. It's my hope, and in speaking before you today, something will be done to hold the American contractors accountable to the American taxpayers. I've worked in the technology sector as a consultant for over 8 years for several companies, mostly in the petroleum industry. My family has a history of service in the military. I've previously served in the Marine Corps, and my son is currently in the U.S. Air Force. I worked in Iraq from August 2003 through August 2004. During that time, I worked for Worldwide Network Services, the Sandy Group, and Cape Environmental Management. I arrived in Iraq in winds in early fall 2003. I was based in the Red Zone in Baghdad as a project manager for WWNS under the direction of DynCorp. WWNS had a subcontract with DynCorp to provide communications and technology support for the DASM contract. I had later learned that a DynCorp vice president was a silent partner in WWNS. When I began working at WWNS, I did an inventory of equipment and material on site, but was unable to reconcile this against the inventory that had been billed. There were missing repeaters. DynCorp charged for radio antennas that did not exist on site. When I brought this to the attention of WWNS executives and DynCorp site manager, I was told not to worry about the missing items and the inaccurate inventory. During my attendance at staff meetings, I became aware that armored cars, weapons, and medical supplies did not exist even though DynCorp had been paid for these items. A classic example of overcharging that was common in Iraq was the provision of laptops to DynCorp by WWNS. On one occasion, around 300 laptops were ordered by WWNS to be delivered to DynCorp. WWNS had brought the laptops from Dell for less than $1,400, but charged DynCorp over $2,800 for each laptop, plus the additional shipping, support, and maintenance of the laptops. That's at least a 100% markup on the cost of each laptop. It seemed to me, no matter how ludicrous the billing was, no one questioned the cost. DynCorp headquarters told the DynCorp site manager that the charges were approved, not to question the bill. One project I was working on involved a major defense contractor. I was managing technicians that were assigned to install equipment at 10 camps, and the contractor is supposed to build throughout Iraq. When the technicians arrived at one of the camps, they called me to tell me that the only marker they could find signaling a camp was a stick in the ground. When I told management that the technicians could not find the camp and the camps did not exist, I was told you're not looking hard enough because the camps do not exist. After the encounter, I knew that I should not push further on why the camps didn't exist. When I left the project, to my knowledge, only 3 of the 10 camps had been properly equipped. When I was working with the same defense contractor, the site manager was involved in bringing prostitutes into the hotels operated by the contractor. A coworker unrelated to the ring was killed when he was traveling an unsecured car and shot performing a high-risk mission. I believe that my coworker could have survived if he'd been riding in an armored car. At the time the armored car would have otherwise had been riding in was being used by the contractor's manager to transport prostitutes from Kuwait to Baghdad. There were other employees involved in the prostitution ring as well. Although the activities had been going on for some time, nothing was done to stop it. till the contractor's home office was informed about the prostitutes. Instead of firing the ringleader, the contractor was merely transferred to a project in Haiti. I left WWNS in 2004 to work as the Vice President of IT and Telecommunications for the Sandy Group. The Sandy Group was a subcontractor for DynCorp. During the course of my work with the Sandy Group, I had met a Vice President at Cape Environmental who was trying to win contracts in Iraq. I was hired by Cape in June 2004 as the Operations and Security Manager. I had oversight responsibilities for certain Cape contracts, and the security was provided to Cape employees. While Cape had experience in doing environmental cleanup work, the company was in Iraq trying to secure reconstruction contracts. Nevertheless, the company was able to secure a contract with the Air Force Center for Engineering and the Environmental, AFSI, to build bridges in Ramadi and Burbitz. Cape had no experience at that time with bridges. To my knowledge, these bridges were not completed. Some of the cement was poured, but the specifications of the contracts were not met. It was clear to me once that once you knew the right people in Iraq, projects could be created with little emphasis on contract performance. One example, I knew of a road project that Cape had been awarded for $7 million. No roads were built or modified. The contracting process that existed at the time was flawed from the beginning when the RFP was submitted to the performance of contract oversight. When I was working at Cape, I also became aware, even though Cape was being paid by the U.S. government to provide housing and food for its employees, Cape employees were signing in and eating at a KBR facility. This meant that Cape was being paid by the government to feed its employees, but the employees were eating for free at KBR. KBR was billing the government for 3 meals a day that is served to the Cape employees. The government was paying for twice the amount of meals provided. When I brought up the double billing to management at Cape, the employee laughed at my concerns and told me he hoped this would not be noticed. My numerous complaints to Cape management about the operations in Iraq finally came to a head in August 2004. As I tried to leave my room on a Friday night, I encountered an armed guard outside my door who told me to remain in my room. I woke up on a Saturday morning and saw OSG, Edinburgh Risk, armed security personnel standing in my room pointing their weapons at me. I was held until Monday morning, given a letter from the construction manager at Cape ordering me to return to the U.S. immediately. I was attacked and beaten. A good friend of mine rescued me with his armed security guards. While I was planning my return to the United States, I received death threats, a picture of my family, which I took to be, I received a picture of my family, which I took to be a threat against my family. Since my return to the United States, I've suffered serious medical problems as a result of the beating, and my medicals have not been paid by the insurance company. There are very tight connections between many people in Iraq, as it was my experience that the contractors protect each other in Iraq. The lack of oversight that allowed waste and fraud to run rampant in Iraq. And it's true that Iraq is referred to as the Wild West, and that's for good reason. Anything seems to go in Iraq, and most are powerless to prevent it.
Mr. Halley, thank you very much for being here and for your testimony.